Think about the most capable, credentialed person you've ever watched make a decision that cost everyone around them something and gained nothing. Not an accident, not bad luck, a choice. You watched it happen in real time, and you thought, how does someone that smart do something that destructive? Here's what no one tells you. In 1976, an economic historian at the University of Bologna named Carlo Cipolla wrote a paper that wasn't supposed to be published. It was a joke, a satirical presentation for colleagues. But the paper described a force in human society so precise, so measurable, and so universal that it never stopped circulating. 48 years later, behavioral economists still reference it. Chipola called it the basic laws of human stupidity. And the first thing he established, before any of the 5 laws, was this: you are almost certainly underestimating the number of stupid people around you. Not because you're not paying attention, because stupidity, as Chipola defined it, has nothing to do with intelligence. Some of the most credentialed, high-functioning, professionally successful people you will ever meet qualify. And by the time this video is over, you will be able to identify exactly who in your professional life falls into each quadrant of his model, including the one you might not want to look at too closely. Carlo Maria Cipolla was not writing comedy. He was an economic historian, a serious one, a professor at UC Berkeley and the University of Pavia, whose work on pre-industrial European economies and monetary history is still standard reading in economic history programs. When he presented The Basic Laws of Human Stupidity in 1976, it circulated as a photocopied joke among colleagues for over a decade before it was formally published in 1988. What made it spread wasn't that it was funny. What made it spread was that every person who read it immediately recognized the behavior it was describing, not in abstract, in specific, in the person 2 desks down, in the meeting they just left, in the decision that had just cost their company a contract they'd spent 6 months building. Chipola's framework is built on a single axis. Does an action benefit or harm the actor? And does it benefit or harm everyone else? That generates a 2x2 matrix with 4 categories of human behavior. 3 of those categories are rational. One of them is the force Chipola spent his career insisting we were chronically, dangerously underestimating. And here's the open loop you're going to be sitting with for the next 16 minutes. Chipola argued that this force, not war, not exploitation, not corruption, is the primary driver of civilizational decline, and that it operates completely invisibly inside organizations and societies because we keep insisting it must have a rational explanation. Before Cipola's 5 laws, you need to understand the map he was working from, because the 5 laws only make sense once you can see the territory. Picture a simple graph. The horizontal axis measures how much an action benefits or harms you, the actor. Move right, you gain. Move left, you lose. The vertical axis measures how much the action benefits or harms everyone else. Move up, others gain. Move down, others lose. This gives you 4 quadrants. Top right, your actions benefit both you and others. Cipolla calls this the intelligent zone, not because it requires a high IQ, but because it's structurally constructive. Trade lives here, collaboration lives here. Most of what we call civilization was built here. Bottom right, your actions benefit you at the expense of others. Cipolla calls these people bandits. Thieves, exploiters, corrupt officials. Harmful, certainly, but rational. There's a clear self-interest logic operating. You can model bandits. You can build defenses against them. Rational actor theory covers this quadrant. Top left, your actions harm you but benefit others. Cipolla calls these people helpless. They're the ones who give more than they receive, chronic overgivers, people who absorb costs without demanding reciprocity. Also modelable, also defensible against exploitation. And then there's the bottom left. Your actions harm both you and others. You lose, they lose. Nobody wins. No rational purpose can be identified. There is no selfish motive. There is no altruistic logic running in reverse. There is simply loss on both sides. Cipolla called people in this quadrant stupid, and he was precise about the definition. A stupid person is someone who causes losses to others without deriving any gain for themselves and possibly incurring losses as well. If you've ever sat in a meeting watching someone defend a decision that was hurting the company and apparently also hurting their own career, and you could not find a single motive that made sense, you were watching the bottom left quadrant operating in real time. If you've ever felt like, I can almost understand greed, I can almost understand malice, but I cannot understand this, that confusion is not a failure of your intelligence, it's a failure of the rational actor framework your brain was trained on. The bottom left quadrant does not yield to rational analysis because it isn't wanting rational code. Now, the 5 laws. And I want to take each one slowly because Chipola's language is deceptively plain. The words look simple. The implications are not. Law 1. Everyone always underestimates the number of stupid individuals in circulation. This one lands as obvious and then stops being obvious the moment you sit with it. Your estimate of how many stupid people you're dealing with is, by structural necessity, too low. Chipola's argument is that this isn't because you're not paying attention. It's because stupid people appear in every demographic category without correlation. Every profession, every education level, every income bracket, every culture, every era. Think about the last time you encountered this behavior from someone you expected to behave intelligently, a credentialed expert, a senior professional, a person whose past decisions had all been sound. The surprise you felt wasn't irrational. It was the Law 1 prediction failing in real time. Your internal estimate was once again too low. Law 2. The probability that a person is stupid is independent of any other characteristic of that person. This is the law that makes Chipola's framework structurally different from every other model of human failure. Stupidity, in his technical definition, does not correlate with IQ. It does not correlate with education, class, status, experience, or measured performance in other domains. A Nobel laureate can occupy the bottom left quadrant. A Fortune 500 CEO can operate from there habitually. This isn't a pop observation. It's a structural claim. The distribution of Chipola's stupidity is, as far as behavioral economists can determine, approximately uniform across all other trait distributions. You've felt the disorientation that comes from this law. You've watched someone whose competence you trusted repeatedly make bottom-left decisions. You searched for an explanation. Stress? A bad week? A hidden agenda you weren't seeing? And none of those explanations held. The Law 2 prediction is sometimes the explanation is simply that this person is operating from the bottom left quadrant and their other competencies are orthogonal to this. Law 3. This is the one. This is the law that behavioral economists have spent 50 years trying to operationalize and failing. Chipola stated it this way: a stupid person is the most dangerous type of person. Not the bandit, not the malicious actor with a clear self-interest motive that you can model and defend against, the stupid person. Because the bandit's damage is bounded by their self-interest, they stop destroying value the moment they've extracted what they came for. The stupid person's damage is unbounded because there is no self-interest calculation stopping it. There is no ceiling on how much value can be destroyed when the destroying isn't serving any purpose. If that feels abstract, let me make it concrete. Cipola's corollary to Law 3 is what behavioral economists call the non-reciprocal destruction problem. Here's the real-world version. In 1985, the management team at Eastern Airlines received a contract offer from the Machinists Union that would have preserved roughly 4,000 jobs at the cost of a wage concession. The CEO, Frank Lorenzo, rejected it. What followed was an 18-month strike that grounded the airline, destroyed $1.2 billion in value, cost Lorenzo his own professional reputation permanently, and ended with the airline's liquidation in 1991. Lorenzo didn't emerge with more power. He didn't extract value from the destruction. He destroyed himself along with everything else. Now, Cipolla would not necessarily classify Lorenzo as stupid based solely on this decision. The point is not that any single bad decision qualifies. The point is the structure of the outcome. Loss on both sides, no extractable benefit on either axis of the graph, no rational motive that survives scrutiny. When that structure appears repeatedly in a person's decision pattern, you are looking at the bottom left quadrant operating systematically. At the organizational level, consider the Kodak case, more precisely documented and more instructive. Kodak engineers invented the digital camera in 1975. The patent was filed by Steve Sossin, then a 24-year-old engineer who demonstrated a 0.01 megapixel device to Kodak's management. They shelved it, not because they didn't understand it, because they were afraid it would cannibalize their film business, which held 90% of the U.S. market in 1976. By 2012, Kodak had filed for bankruptcy. The digital camera revolution they delayed by suppressing their own invention happened anyway, through Sony, through Canon, eventually through the smartphone, and Kodak lost both the film business they were protecting and the digital business they'd invented. Loss on both axes. The people who made the decision to shelve that patent were not incompetent in other domains. They were, by most measures, experienced and effective executives. Cipolla's law, too, predicts exactly this. Their competence elsewhere was orthogonal to this particular bottom-left decision. And here's the mirror. Think about a professional context you've been in where you watched a version of this play out, not at billion-dollar scale, but structurally identical. Someone with real competence making a decision that hurt them and hurt everyone around them with no extractable benefit for anyone. You probably have at least two clear examples.
Law 4. Non-stupid people always underestimate the damaging power of stupid individuals. This is the operational trap, and it's the reason that defenses against bandits, rational actor defenses, incentive alignment defenses, information asymmetry defenses consistently fail when applied to the bottom left quadrant. You build your defense assuming the attacker has something to gain. The moment that assumption is wrong, your defense has no surface to grip. Cipolla argued that intelligent people, specifically those operating from the top right quadrant, make this error constantly. They assume a rational motive they're simply not seeing yet. They go looking for the hidden self-interest. And while they're searching for a motive that doesn't exist, the bottom left damage compounds. The institutional version of this trap is the endless internal review that concludes there must be some misalignment of incentives we haven't identified. We need to restructure the compensation model. We need more information. We need another quarter of data. All of which are sensible responses to bandit behavior and completely ineffective responses to bottom-left behavior, because bottom-left behavior is not responding to incentive structures at all. Law 5. A stupid person is the most dangerous type of person. Corollary, a stupid person is more dangerous than a bandit. Cipolla's fifth law is simply the elaboration of the third, but the corollary is the part that behavioral economists kept returning to, because it inverts the conventional threat hierarchy that institutional design is built on. Every organization in the world is designed to contain bandits, lockboxes, audits, governance structures, compliance frameworks, board oversight. All of it is rational actor defense. None of it is bottom-left defense, because bottom-left behavior doesn't respond to those structures. And then there's what Cipolla called the golden fraction, his most speculative claim, and the one that has aged the most controversially. He suggested that regardless of the group you're measuring, a company, a country, a civilization, approximately the same fraction of actors will occupy the bottom left quadrant, stable across cultures, education levels, eras. He never claimed a precise number, but he was clear the fraction is larger than you think, more stable than any other cognitive trait distribution, and the primary variable that determines whether a civilization rises or declines is not how many intelligent people it produces, but how effectively it prevents its stupid fraction from gaining structural power. Sit with that for a moment. The rise and fall of institutions, and possibly civilizations, measured not by the density of competence at the top, but by the containment of the bottom left quadrant.
Now, we need to talk about the part of Cipola's model that people resist the most. Because everything I've described so far is comfortable. It's a model for identifying the problem-causing people around you, the bottom-left actors in your organization, the colleagues and executives and institutional figures who generate net loss for everyone, including themselves. It feels like a diagnostic tool for other people. But Cipola's law, too, that stupidity is uniformly distributed across all other trait distributions, means the quadrant you occupy is not fixed. It is not a permanent feature of your character. It is a feature of specific decisions in specific contexts under specific conditions. You have made bottom-left decisions. I'm not guessing. Everyone who has ever operated inside a complex system under pressure and incomplete information has made bottom-left decisions. Decisions that cost you something and cost everyone around you something and produce no extractable benefit for anyone. The question Cipola's framework forces you to ask is not, am I a stupid person? The question is, under what conditions do I generate bottom-left outcomes? And am I currently in any of those conditions? This is what Cipolla called the most dangerous insight in the model. Not identifying the stupid actors around you, but identifying the conditions under which you reliably become one, because that's the only part of the quadrant you actually have any leverage over. Here's what Cipolla actually gave us, and it's more useful than a personality model because it doesn't require you to correctly classify individuals before you can apply it. The model is a filter for decisions, not for people. The question is never, is this person stupid? The question is this decision in this context generating a bottom-left outcome? Is this action producing loss on both axes? And if so, is there any rational motive I've actually confirmed, or have I been assuming one exists? This reframe matters because it removes the attribution error that makes Cipolla's model difficult to operationalize. You don't need to decide whether someone is fundamentally a bottom-left actor. You need to identify when a decision is generating a bottom-left outcome. That's measurable. That's observable. You can ask it about any decision on the table, including your own. For the 35-year-old version of you who sat in rooms watching inexplicable decisions cascade into organizational damage and thought, I must be missing something. I must not be smart enough to see the motive. You weren't missing anything. The motive wasn't there. The quadrant was bottom left, and your discomfort was the correct signal. Cipolla's laws are not a pessimism framework. They are a precision framework. You can't defend against what you can't name. Now you have the name. The question is whether you'll be willing to apply it in the directions that are uncomfortable, including inward. Now, there's a problem with everything I just gave you. Cipolla's model tells you how to identify the bottom-left decision after it's been made. It gives you a framework for understanding the damage in retrospect. But there's a specific category of decision that is structurally designed to look like top-right behavior, intelligent, beneficial, constructive, while reliably generating bottom-left outcomes at scale. It's not a random failure pattern. It's a predictable consequence of the specific way intelligent people solve visible problems. And the evidence for it is so consistent across industries and eras that economists gave it its own law. In colonial India, the British government tried to reduce the cobra population in Delhi by paying citizens per cobra head delivered. The program was logical, the incentive aligned with the goal, and within months, people were breeding cobras in captivity to collect the reward. What happened next, and why this same mechanism appears in every performance metric ever attached to a human institution, is what the next video is about. What it's like to build something that destroys the very problem you were trying to solve. Every insight you just built about bottom-left behavior only sharpens once you see how the cobra effect works. That's the next one. You won't see organizational incentive structures the same way after it.